Exodus chapter 14 and chapter 19. And I've got just a few verses in each place, but I was doing my reading. We started over a new year, and I started in another year heading through the Bible. And I counted up the other day how many years that I had gone through it, and I don't remember it. I guess it's really not that important. But I've set out probably the last 7 years, I think, at the beginning of every year to try to read a little bit every day. And I've been trying to get through the Bible. And I can honestly say there were times that it was a struggle to read, because I had to especially in the beginning, I had to make myself start. And I thought, well, I'm reading through all this, but I'm really not remembering it, so, you know, why am I reading through it? But yet I find myself, like today, Brother Bill was using the scriptures, and I didn't even have to look them up, I knew them. Amen. You know, and I didn't realize that I actually knew as much as I did. And it all started because I felt challenged that first year to read through. Well, I thought, well, I made it the first year. Let me go another year. And then another, and then another. And, well, I got to Exodus so far. And when I was reading it, in Exodus, for some reason I couldn't quit thinking about it. I got to thinking about all that the children of Israel was going through, and how they had prayed, and they had prayed and prayed, and they were wanting to be, they were oppressed, and they were wanting to be delivered. And then I thought, you know, the way this whole world's going, it seems like, you know, there was a time when Christians were in the majority, and you know, we had, you could look around and in the courthouses and everywhere, you could see the Ten Commandments. It was never anything to have a manger scene, you know, out in your front yard or on at the courthouse and all these places, and all this stuff was, you know, it's little things, but yet everything was there, and times seemed like people were so much happier then. Well, then first one person, then another starts getting upset and starts making noise, you know, and I got to thinking about even the homosexual lifestyle. You know how when I went in the Army in 1975, that was something that nobody talked about. And even growing up, I'm quite sure there were those of that persuasion that were around us, but nobody knew it. Everybody kept their mouth shut, you know, and they kind of kept to themselves. And now, even Disney's got it in their movies. And I've started noticing on commercials, they're showing men with men and women with women, even just trying to sell products. And it's everywhere you turn, and I'm thinking, man, how awful can it be? And then we turn around and we see what happened in New York. And as awful as it is, I remember having those exact same feelings when the homosexuals started coming out, you know, and when Roe vs. Wade first came out. And it's just yet another step to see how evil we can actually get before the Lord actually squishes us. We know that the world got so evil one time that He flooded the whole world. And I can't help but wonder how much longer it's going to be before He said, you know what, I've had enough. I'm going to take those that are saved, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get them, set them free.
Amen.
And when I was reading through this, I kind of felt like the children of Israel. And I kind of felt like I was praying, Lord, this world is oppressing us more and more and more. Lord, I want deliverance. I want to see deliverance. Even in the churches where we feel free to gather in and we have a freedom of worship, there's still something missing. We don't quite have the freedom that we used to have. Or we don't show it as much, and for whatever reason. Maybe it's been because we've been oppressed for so many years. Maybe so many things have gone on, and we dwell on all the awful things that are happening. And you know, I look at these things, and it's almost like I can't even believe what I'm seeing or reading. It's like my mind can't even comprehend it. And so I've been praying, Lord, just deliver us. And when I read through this, and I got to reading about how God heard their prayer, and He's going to answer, and He decided that He was going to use Moses, and He went in, and then I got to looking at Pharaoh, and what stood out, and what got me to thinking this whole line, along these whole lines, was the hardness of people's hearts.
Yeah.
And the only way these things that are going on in this world nowadays are going on is because people's hearts have been hardened. People have gotten to the point to where they have gotten so far away from the things of the Lord that their heart has become so hard that even when they see miracles, it doesn't seem to faze them. I mean, I look down through here, and let me go over to my notes because I jotted a few of these things down. But you know, I got to thinking about old Pharaoh and all the mighty things that God did in His presence. How the water was turned to blood. And He said, oh, let's fix this. And then the plague of the frogs. I can't imagine frogs being everywhere. I can't imagine opening up the pantry looking for food and have frogs jumping out at me. Yeah. But everywhere, and people started telling Him, let these people go. Just get rid of these frogs. We don't want it anymore. And so the frogs are gone. And then His heart got hard again. Once the trouble went away, His heart got hard. Then the lice. You know, I wish the lice would have just completely gone when it went and never moved to come on this earth again. It's been around. I remember in school having lice checks and having to go and sit down because, I mean, it's just part of life, but yet it's there. Such a nuisance. And I can understand why the people would say, Pharaoh, let these people go, just get rid of these things. You know? Yeah, make it red, it's already. But you know, once they were gone, the first thing he thought was, nope, they're gone. I got what I wanted. They can't leave. Then the cows started dying. All of them. And boy, don't you know that stink. We've had some awful smells around here, but you get that many dead animals, oh, I don't know how you can even breathe around here. You know, just driving by, if one's laid there on the side of the road a while, it's terrible. And that didn't do the trick. And then all the boils come up on them. Well, I don't know, I haven't had boils like that, but I worked at a place where the coolant that they used in the machines had my hands to where little bubbles would come up underneath the skin. You could see them, and they would itch. And then when them little bubbles would surface, they would just crack open. And there wasn't anything I could put on them that would keep it from happening. I could keep lotion on them. They gave me steroid hand cream. Well, it would take care of it for a little bit, but just as soon as they went away, new ones started coming back. And to the point that I was going to leave the job and go look for work elsewhere just because I was so miserable. So I can relate to how miserable these people were. God did take care of me, and they actually said, well, you know, you're not the first person that's had this problem. Maybe we need to look into changing this coolant, and they did. So it wasn't all bad, but, you know, had to deal with that. And then the fire and the hail came and got rid of everything. And then what the fire and hail didn't get rid of, the locusts came and got. And so the land has just been stripped clean. And yet, Pharaoh, being so stubborn, hits his head against the wall again, and he goes, yeah, okay, y'all can go, and just let this be gone. And when it's gone, he's like, I changed my mind. Yep. You know? And in darkness. I can't imagine living even up in Alaska in some of those places where it gets dark and it stays dark for days, months. I don't know exactly how long it is. It's too long. How do you know when it's supposed to be AM or PM, when you're supposed to be working or not working? You know? And after a while, the darkness just starts, it's like it closes in on you. And yet still, even with all that, God's doing all these things and proving himself over and over and over again. And Pharaoh just continues to be stubborn and hard-headed and say, well, look, now it's light again, and I'm not going to let them go. And before they actually got to go, it actually took the death of all the firstborn children. It's sad that people nowadays have to get to the point to where they finally hit absolute rock bottom before they'll do anything, before they'll change, before they'll listen. And you know, pretty much that's what had happened. You know, the firstborn child all across the land, all the firstborn are gone except for the children of Israel. As long as they did what God told them to do, you know. And Pharaoh finally said, you know what, I can't take it anymore. I've been 10 times these things have happened. And it's like, I can't deal with it anymore. Go. Just go. And it was awesome. They got to leave. And when they got to leave, they didn't leave poor people either. They left with the spoils of Egypt. And the people were probably glad to give them everything they had in their household just to get rid of them, because they knew that was the root of their problems. And as long as they were there, things were going to continue to happen, and things were going to continue to get worse. And who knows what would have happened if he had hardened his heart after losing the firstborn child. I don't know what would have happened next. And I think the people were the same way. But, you know, we sometimes, well, I got to thinking about that, and then I got to thinking about, well, the children of Israel, they prayed to be delivered. God sent Moses to do the job. But yet, It didn't happen overnight. How many times when we pray for something, and it looks like God is going to answer our prayer, but it doesn't happen overnight, how many times do we just give up on it? Well, Lord, if I've got to go through this, and I got to go through that, Lord, I wanted you to deliver me, but I didn't want to have to do this. And it could be any number of things. Lord, I didn't know I was going to have to work for my freedom. I didn't know things were going to get worse before they got better. You know, they had to produce more bricks. They had, and they weren't provided, their straw wasn't provided for them anymore. They had to go out and gather it and still hit their toll of bricks, you know, all this stuff. Well, they're thinking, you know, I'm sure when Moses first came, they were all excited. All right, God's going to set us free. And then things got worse. And I'm quite sure they were thinking, God, I thought you were going to deliver us. I thought this was going to be a good thing he's here. But things are getting worse. How many times have you prayed for God to move in a situation only to have things turn around and get worse? You feel down inside he's going to answer, but things turned around and got worse before they got better. And, you know, they had to learn patience. And especially, can you imagine, when Moses went to him before that last plague, and he said, look, the death angel's going to come, and it's not going to be very good. But if you will do this, and this, and this, and laid it out for them step by step, and you will stay in your houses, and you will do exactly as I say, your families will be spared. Well, you know, after seeing all that God had been doing, they were probably afraid not to do what Moses told them to do, you know, and so you know they had to learn their patience, they had to learn obedience, and finally, when I can just imagine when the sun rose that next day, and they heard all the crying all across the land. Every household was affected. That's it. And to hear the wailing and the sobbing and the crying, and yet to look and see that not one of their children had been affected. Well, that had to bring them joy right there. And then when they gathered up everything, and they got the spoils, and they were leaving. They got to leave Egypt. All right, we're happy, we're excited. And they go, and they were left with the spoils, and they're happy, and God is leading them, and Moses is finally leading them out. Pharaoh's finally letting them go, and I can imagine that they pretty much had camp meeting all the way out, all the way across the land as they were going. They were probably, I mean, the talk through the whole group was probably nothing but how, well, did you see how the fire came down? You remember when this happened? You remember when that happened? The God that we serve and we pray to, He did all this, and He saved our children, and now we're free. We're free. We don't have to serve. We don't have to be servants anymore. And they're all excited, you know, and God's blessing them. And then they get out there, and they come up against the Red Sea. And they're still happy until they look back and they see one more time Pharaoh's heart got hardened again. Well, I want to read a little bit, since I said I was going to, in Exodus 14, and I'm going to start in verse 13. It said, Moses said to the people, fear ye not, This is after when they turned around and they looked and they seen that Pharaoh was coming after them. Moses said to the people, "Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord."
Glory.
Whew. And I'm thinking to myself, had they not already seen the salvation of the Lord? But yet they were afraid. They were afraid because Pharaoh was coming back after them. And he had to tell them, "Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians, whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever." Whew! Can you imagine if you just hang on to whatever battle it is you're going through, whatever you're trying to get the victory over, whatever, be it an attitude or a habit or someone coming against you or whatever it is, can you imagine if you got to the point to where God said, "Fear not, stand still and see the salvation." When he tells you the day that you've been waiting for is going to come, stand still and see the salvation. Your victory is on its way today. Whatever you've been struggling with is on its way. And when that victory comes, you will see it no more again ever.
Glory.
Man, I like that. I got to thinking about that, and I got to looking back at some of the things that God's delivered me from, and it was right. I haven't had to see it again ever.
Glory.
Now, I wish I could say that I didn't have any more battles anymore, but you know what? I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. I'm still here on earth. There's going to be trouble. It's going to happen. But then he said, the Lord, verse 14, "The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." And the Lord said to Moses, "Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward, but lift thou up thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea." Can you imagine? I would love to have been there to experience something like that.
Amen.
I mean, we went to Branson, and we saw the play that they did about Moses, and the waters parted in the way they did it, just the excitement when the waters actually parted. If I can experience that just watching the play, imagine what it would have been like to be there.
Yeah.
To physically see as he stretched out that staff, his rod, over the sea, and to watch as the waters parted and the ground got dry. I mean, I would just be standing there dumbfounded going, wow, you know? And when he said, "Come on, let's go," I'd have probably been standing there staring at it, looking at it in awe, and somebody would have had to say, "Hey, come on, you don't want to be left behind." And then to go, and don't you know, going across there, some kid reached over and stuck his hand out into the wall of water to see if it was actually wet. You know it had to happen. The Bible doesn't say it, but kids are going to be kids. There's probably some adults that did.
Yeah.
I would have probably been looking to see what fish there was going to have for supper. But to go across, I'd have been singing all the way across and skipping all the way across there, you know? And then they got on the other side and they built a monument to remind them of what had happened. But they got on the other side, and let's jump down here, verse 23. And the Egyptians pursued. Yeah, they saw the Egyptians coming. Yeah, they went through on dry ground, but they looked back and the Egyptians were still coming.
Yep.
They pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they I lost my place. Huh? 25. Okay, there you go. Yeah, dragged them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians." Well, they get out in the middle of the sea and they lose their wheels, and they're starting to realize something's up here, buddy. God's at it again. And the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out thy hand over the sea." Whew. I'd like to be Moses. That would be awesome. To stand there. Stretch out thy hand over the sea, that the waters may come upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. Wow. I can't fathom what it would have been like to be there and to watch as the waters parted, and then to go through on the dry ground, and then to stand there and watch as Moses stretched out his hand and watch the waters come in and cover the enemy. And I mean, can you just imagine? Man, I think there would have been a shout that went up so loud that they heard it all the way back in Egypt. And the singing and the praising. And yet, each and every time that the children of Israel came up against another obstacle, it was as though their heart, to some extent, was hardened. Because they saw it as an obstacle and not as another opportunity. God had never let them down. He had always taken care of them. He had delivered them. He had spared their children. They saw the sea part. They saw it go back. And yet, they got thirsty and they got hungry, and they came up against cities, and they came up against one thing and then another, and they started murmuring and complaining, "Oh Lord, we're going to die. We should have stayed back there." Really? I'm going to tell you right now, there ain't nothing in my past I want to go back to.
Amen.
Ain't nothing that I had before I gave my heart back to the Lord when I was in the Army. I want no part of that lifestyle ever again. I hate it, don't even have a desire to go back to it. And yet, they come up against troubles. And when troubles come, they say, "Oh Lord, what are we going to do? I don't know how I'm going to make it." And yet He's met each and every one of our needs so far. He's never let us do without. He's always seen to it that we're taken care of. Yes. God has met my need each and every time. Yes, bad things have happened along the way, but that's part of life. But yet God has given me the victory each and every time. Glory. To the point that I feel like, Brother Bill, I must be one of God's favorite people because He keeps blessing me. And I want to jump over for just a second into Exodus 19. And I just want to read a few verses there as a reminder. Starting in verse 4, it says, "Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, this is for us. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my commandments, my covenant, then ye shall be a particular treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
Glory.
We as Christians, if we obey God and His covenant and His commandments, and we follow after Him, then in the midst of all this evil that's going on around about us, we are going to be peculiar and treasured. He said we're going to be treasured people. I'm going to be one of God's treasured people. As long as I keep His commandments.
Glory.
And verse 6 says, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel.
Oh.
Man, can you imagine? Can you just imagine that? Yes, evil is going on around us. And I'm dumbfounded by how ignorant some people can be. People that claim to be wise, it doesn't make any sense, you know. How their heart has been so hardened and they can't see what they're doing. But God says if we will just obey Him and stay with Him, that we will be a treasured people unto Him. You want to be one of God's favorite people and you want to walk around in those blessings, follow after Him.
Amen.
Do what He says. You know, I thought about that. I've been thinking about this for weeks. And to think about it, I got down there at the end of that. I was reading this the other day and thought, you know what? I am treasured.
That's it.
I am treasured.
Glory.
Unto my Savior. He came down from heaven down here so that I could spend eternity with Him.
Glory.
I am treasured, and He says all I got to do is keep His commandments and follow Him.
Amen.
Sounds like it's a simple thing, but yet people find it so hard.
Help us, Lord. Glory.
Just think. I'm a treasured person. Let's go from here tonight.
Yes, Lord.
Let's go out into the week next week. And I don't care what battles you're fighting. Remember, to God, you're a treasure. He cared enough to send His own Son down here so that He could come and He could take us home one day. And by the looks of things in this world nowadays, it's not going to be too much longer.
Glory.
I seriously don't know that I'll go by way of death. I believe I'll go by way of rapture. I may not, but the way things are looking, I don't see how He can put off His coming back much longer.
That's it.
Well, let's go out this next week.
Glory.